we are discussing political culture as discussed by Gabriel Almond and Sidney Verba in their book, The Civic Culture. The study is based on the study of five nations. It is chapter one. And here, Almond and Verba, they are talking about classification of political cultures. And they mention what matters for our classification is this: which political objects people focus on, which political objects people this includes the structures, individuals, what are his feelings and opinions of them. 4. How does he perceive himself as a member of his political system? What knowledge does he have of his rights, powers, obligations, and strategies for gaining influence? How does he feel about his own capabilities? What norms of participation or of performance does he accept and use in forming or arriving at opinions? What norms of participation he accepts? Describing the political culture means filling in such a table for a proper sample of its population. So in survey, we take a sample and then we conduct this survey. So first we identify a population, then we take a sample, then we conduct a survey and collect the data and then we analyze it. Political culture shows how people think about politics. Political culture includes different kinds of attitudes and feelings. People may have knowledge about the political system. These are called cognitive orientations. People may have emotions about politics. These are called affective orientations. People also make judgments about politics. These are called evaluative orientations. These attitudes are related to the political system as a whole. They are also related to the input side of the system. For example, voting and public demands. Voting is input, demands are input. They are related to the output side as well. For example, laws and government decisions. When the government makes a law, it is an output. Political culture also includes how people see themselves as political actors. How do they see their rights and duties toward the political system? For example, whether they think they can influence politics or not. Are they hopeful about democracy or are they pessimist? Are they hopeless? So these things are also related to the political culture. Parochial political culture. It is the first main type of political culture that the authors identify in this book. Parochial political culture. Gabriel Almond and Sidney Verba, they identify it as the first main type of political culture. When the frequency of these orientations towards specialized political objects approaches zero, we can speak of the political culture as a parochial one. So people are not much aware of they don't have much knowledge about the political system. They don't have very strong feelings about their political system, and they do not evaluate it. It simply means it is a parochial culture. The political cultures of African tribal societies would fall into this category. The political cultures of autonomous local communities would also fall into this category. Autonomous local communities, they are also like tribes. In these societies, there are no specialized political roles. No specialized political roles. There is only one leader, tribal elder maybe, and he or she is all in all. No specialized roles, no judge, no policeman, okay, no advocate, like this. Roles like headman, chief, or shaman are diffuse political, economic, religious roles. These are political, economic, religious roles. Headman, chief, or shaman. Shaman means a priest or priestess who uses magic for the purpose of curing the sick, uses magic for the purpose of curing the sick, divining the hidden, and controlling events. Shamans. For members of these societies, political orientations to these roles are not separated from their religious and social orientations. So, in parochial political cultures, there's no much differentiation between social structures or political structure or economic structures. A parochial orientation also implies a lack of expectation of change. So they are not very hopeful people in a parochial culture. Started by the political system. A parochial orientation also implies a lack of expectation of change started by the political system. So, can we here raise a question that the Pakistanis who say Pakistan's political system is very bad, it is very worse, it is doing nothing, it is not changing, it is not delivering. Can we say that the person who is complaining this way has a parochial political culture, belongs to a parochial political culture? Maybe he or she is not well aware of our political culture, political system. We can scientifically explore this question, systematically explore this question on Pakistanis. So, a parochial orientation also implies a lack of expectation of change started by the political system. The parochial person expects nothing from the political system. The parochial person expects nothing from the political system. So, sort of hopeless. Similarly, in the centralized African chiefdoms and kingdoms, the political cultures would be mostly parochial. However, the development of somewhat more specialized roles in these societies might mean the beginnings of more differentiated political orientations. Even larger and more differentiated political systems may have mostly parochial cultures. So, if political culture is very developed, if a political system is very developed, even there you can find some people who belong to a parochial political culture. If a political system is very developed, it does not mean that all people within it are very advanced politically. Some may not have good knowledge of the political system. But pure parochialism is likely to occur in simpler traditional systems where political specialization is minimal. Pure parochialism is likely to occur in simpler traditional systems where political specialization is minimal. Parochialism in more differentiated political systems is likely to be based on feelings and norms rather than knowledge. So, parochialism actually belongs to traditions or feelings or norms. It simply means lack of political knowledge, lack of political understanding. That is, the remote tribesmen in Nigeria or Ghana may be dimly aware of the existence of a central political regime. The remote tribesmen in Nigeria or Ghana may be dimly aware of the existence of a central political regime, but his feelings toward it are uncertain or negative, and he has not internalized any norms to guide his relationship to it. Number two, the subject political culture. The second major type of political culture is the subject culture. Here, there is a high frequency of orientations toward a differentiated political system. High frequency of orientations toward a differentiated political system. So there you may have separate judiciary, separate legislative, separate executive. There is also a high frequency of orientations toward the output aspects of the system, but orientations toward specific input objects approach zero. So in a parochial culture, all three dimensions are close to zero. Here, orientations towards specific input objects is closely zero. Orientations toward the self as an active parliament participant also toward the self as an active participant also approach zero. The subject is aware of specialized governmental authority. The subject is aware of specialized governmental authority. He is emotionally oriented to it, perhaps taking pride in it, perhaps disliking it, and he evaluates it as either legitimate or not. But the relationship is toward the system on the general level. The relationship to the political system is on the general level. It is not a strong relationship. The subject does not have a strong relationship with the political system. The relationship is also toward the outward, administrative, or downward flow side of the political system. It is essentially a passive relationship. It is not an active relationship between the subject and the political system. It is a passive relationship between the subject and the political system. However, as we will show later, there is a limited form of competence that is appropriate in a subject culture. There is a limited form of competence that is appropriate in a subject culture. So, people, the officials are not very competent. People in the subject political culture, they are not very competent. Some sort of competence there may be, but overall it is not competent. Again, we are speaking of the pure subject orientation. This is likely to exist in a society where there is no differentiated input structure. This is likely to exist. The subject political culture is likely to exist in a society where there is no differentiated input structure. The subject orientation in political systems that have developed democratic institutions is likely to be based on feelings and norms rather than knowledge. So, the political feelings and political norms, they, they prevail, they exist, but political understanding, political knowledge is weak in a subject political culture. So here again, we can raise a question. Pakistanis as a whole, do they belong to the subject political culture, or only few Pakistanis belong to a political subject political culture? Someone may argue that because Pakistanis are very passionate about politics, about political leaders, about political gatherings, and political objects, and they have strong feelings, strong emotions, strong political feelings, strong political emotions, but they lack in understanding of the political system. How does the political system work? And maybe uh, Pakistani political culture is a subject political culture. So I think it can be a very interesting field of inquiry, interesting topic for inquiry. Thus, a French royalist is aware of democratic institutions. French royalist, a French citizen who likes monarchy, royalist, may be aware of democratic institutions. He simply does not accept their legitimacy because he likes monarchy. He does not accept democratic institutions. Number three, the participant political culture. The third major type of political culture is the participant culture. Here, the members of society tend to be clearly oriented to this system as a whole. People are clearly oriented toward their political system in the participant political culture. In the parochial political culture and the subject political culture, people do not have a clear orientation toward their political system. In the participant political culture, people are also oriented to both the political and administrative structures and processes. So they have good understanding of the administration, political administration, and the political processes. In other words, they are oriented to both the input and output aspects of the political system. So they know the how to make demands, and they know how demands are met, how policies are made and implemented. Individual members of the participant polity may be favorably or unfavorably oriented to the various classes of political objects. They tend to be oriented toward an activist role of the self in the political system, but their feelings and evaluations of such a role may vary from acceptance to rejection, as we will show later. So the authors will discuss this point later in the book. This threefold classification of political cultures does not assume that one orientation replaces the others. The authors do not assume that one orientation, parochial, subject, or participant, it does not replace the other. All three exist in all societies with varying degrees. There is overlapping. The matter is of degree, the point is of degree. The subject culture does not get rid of diffuse orientations to the primary and intimate structures of community. It adds a specialized subject orientation to the government institutions, the participant political culture. Similarly, the participant culture does not replace the subject and parochial patterns of orientation. They continue to exist at a lower level, at a lower frequency. The participant culture is an additional layer that may be added to and combined with the subject and parochial cultures. Thus, the citizen of a participant polity is not only oriented toward active participation in politics, he is also subject to law and authority. He has a good understanding of the system, he has good relationship with it, with good connection with it, but he also accepts the law, he abides by the law, and he accepts the authority. And he is a member of more diffuse primary groups as well. However, adding participant orientations to subject and parochial orientations does not leave these earlier orientations unchanged. Although the parochial and subject political cultures continue to exist, but some change does take place when a political culture becomes participant political culture. Some sort of change does take place in these parochial and political and subject political culture in that society, although it is not completely replaced. The parochial orientations must adapt when new and more specialized orientations enter the picture. Both parochial and subject orientations also change when participant orientations are acquired. In fact, the five democracies differ greatly from each other. One major difference is their political culture. People in these countries have different political attitudes and behaviors. The five countries they have studied in this book. They include America, France, UK, Germany, and Italy. These attitudes are called parochial, subject, and participant orientations. In some countries, these orientations are separate. In other countries, they are mixed together. Sometimes they combine in different ways within the same person. Sometimes they combine in different ways within the same person. One person can be subject, parochial as well as participant. Yes, in some ways, from issue to issue. The way these orientations mix together shape the political system. It also creates important differences among the five democracies. Another caution is necessary. Our classification does not imply sameness of or uniformity of political cultures. Political cultures are, suppose there are 10 participant political cultures in the world, another 10 are subject political cultures, another 10 are parochial political cultures. It does not mean that all 10 parochial cultures are same. No, again they are different from one another. Similarly, all others. So we need to be cautious. Our classification does not imply sameness or uniformity of political cultures. Thus, political systems with mostly participant cultures will still include both subjects and parochials. The processes of political socialization are not perfect. Political socialization process is not perfect. People also have personal preferences that shape their views. Personal preferences. There are limits in intelligence for some individuals. Some people are more intelligent, some are less. So it also affects their socialization, political socialization. Some people also have fewer opportunities to learn, fewer opportunities. A child who is born in a forest does not have much opportunity. There's no school, no academy. On the other hand, a child born in a city has more chances. Similarly, a child born to a poor man, even within a city, has less chances of learning because he has to go to for labor in the childhood. The child does not have the opportunity to go to school. Another child born to a well-off family has more opportunities to learn. So some people also have fewer opportunities to learn their political system. Because of these factors, subjects and parochials will continue to exist. This will happen even in well established and stable democracies. Similarly, parochials will continue to exist even in high subject cultures. Parochials will continue to exist even in high subject cultures. So there are two aspects of cultural mix. The citizen is a particular mix of participant, subject, and parochial orientations, and the civic culture is a particular mix of citizens, subjects, and parochials. There is a mix of three cultures within a person, and there is a mix of culture, the different citizens within a culture. Three cultures within a citizen, and three persons from different cultures within a system, political system. These are two aspects of political mix, cultural mix of political cultures. For the citizen, we need to understand some key concepts. These include proportions, thresholds, and harmony. These ideas help us understand behavior more clearly. A citizen has a mix of different attitudes. These include participant, subject, and parochial attitudes. We use these concepts to see how this mix affects performance. They also help explain what makes performance effective. For civic culture, we need certain concepts. These concepts are proportion, thresholds, and harmony. They help us understand social balance. We use them to study the mix of citizens in a society. This mix includes citizens, subjects, and parochials. This mixture is important for democracy. It helps explain how democratic systems perform effectively. Our threefold classification of participant, subject, and parochial is only the beginning of a classification of political cultures. Amir sir, it is only the beginning of the classification of political cultures. Beginning of the classes. Classification. Beginning of the if you keep on sleeping, then it is the beginning. Each one of these major classes, each one of these major classes has its subclasses. Each one of these major classes has its subclasses. And our classification has left out entirely the dimension of political development and cultural change. Let us look into this later question first. So, in the next part, they will address this first question since it will help us handle the problem of subclassification with a better set of conceptual tools.